Welcome back to Bibliobibuli, where we are reading A Song of Ice and Fire, a Game of Thrones. Where last time
we got to meet Daenerys Targaryen and her brother Viserys. They are the last surviving heirs to the Targaryen throne, and they've been running all over the free cities, trying to escape from, quote, the usurper and his knives, and trying to build up support so that they can go back and take the Iron Throne. So Viserys, we find out, is kind of a douche, and sells his sister off to be married to Khal Drogo, a Dothraki with lovely hair.
it's for the greater good.
Dumbledore would be proud, I guess.
No, we're not even going to go down that line.
If who's Dumbledore?
Viserys.
No.
Dumbledore would not be proud of Viserys.
No.
Bottom line.
No.
No.
It's something Voldemort might do. Voldemort.
If Harry Potter didn't have to keep a PG-13 rating, pretty sure that's how Voldemort probably would have treated Bellatrix.
Her life kind of sucks.
Yes, it does.
She's being used as a pawn for her brother to gain an army of horse lords.
I'm sure that will work out for him with no ill consequences at all.
I'm sure it'll be fine. It'll be great. Eddard. The visitors poured through the castle gates in a river of gold and silver and polished steel, 300 strong, a pride of bannermen and knights, of sawn swords and free riders. Over their heads a dozen golden banners whipped back and forth in the northern wind, emblazoned with the crowned stag of Baratheon. Ned knew many of the riders. There came Sir Jaime Lannister, with hair as bright as beaten gold, and there Sandor Clegane with his terrible burned face. The tall boy beside him could only be the Crown Prince, and that stunted little man behind them was surely the imp, Tyrion Lannister. Yet the huge man at the head of the column, flanked by 2 knights in the snowy white cloaks of the King's Guard, seemed almost a stranger to Ned, until he vaulted off the back of his war-horse with a familiar roar and crushed him in a bone-crunching hug. "Ned! Ah, but it is good to see that frozen face of yours." The king looked him over from top to bottom and laughed. "You've not changed at all." Would that Ned had been able to say the same. 15 years past they had ridden forth to win a throne. The Lord of Storm's End had been clean-shaven, clear-eyed, and muscled like a maiden's fantasy. 6.5 feet tall, he towered over lesser men, and when he donned his armour and the great antlered helmet of his house, he became a veritable giant. He'd had a giant's strength, too, his weapon of choice a spiked iron war-hammer that Ned could scarcely lift. In those days the smell of leather and blood had clung to him like perfume. Now it was perfume that clung to him like perfume, and he had a girth to match his weight. Ned had last seen the king 9 years during Balon Greyjoy's rebellion, when the stag and the direwolf had joined to end the pretensions of the self-proclaimed king of the Iron Islands. Since the night they had stood side by side in Greyjoy's fallen stronghold, where Robert had accepted the rebel lord's surrender, and Ned had taken his son Theon as hostage and ward, the king had gained at least 8 stone. A beard as coarse and black as iron wire covered his jaw to hide his double chin and the sag of his royal jowls, but nothing could hide his stomach or the dark circles under his eyes. Yet Robert was Ned's king now, and not just a friend, so he only said, "Your Grace, Winterfell is yours." By then the others were dismounting as well, and the grooms were coming toward with their mounts. Robert's queen, Cersei Lannister, entered on foot with her younger children. The wheelhouse in which they'd ridden, a huge double-decked carriage of oiled oak and gilded metal, pulled up 40 heavy draught horses, was too wide to pass through the castle gate. Ned knelt in the snow to kiss the queen's ring, while Robert embraced Catelyn like a long-lost sister. Then the children were brought forward, introduced and approved of by both sides. No sooner had those familiarities of greeting been completed than the king said to the host, "Take me down to your crypt, Eddard. I would pay my respects." Ned loved him for that. for remembering her still after all these years. He called for a lantern. No other words were needed. The Queen had begun to protest. They had been riding since dawn. Everyone was tired and cold. Surely they should refresh themselves first. The dead would wait. She said no more than that. Robert looked at her, and her twin brother Jamie had taken her quietly by the arm, and she said no more. They went down to the crypt together, Ned and this king he scarcely recognized. The winding stone steps were narrow. Ned went first with the lantern. "I was starting to think we'd never reach Winterfell," Robert complained as they descended. "In the south, the way they talk about my 7 kingdoms, a man forgets that your part is as big as the other 6 combined." "I trust you enjoyed your journey, Lord Grace?" Robert snorted. "Bogs and forests and fields, and scarcely a decent inn north of the Neck. I've never seen such a vast emptiness. Where are all your people?" "Likely they were too shy to come out," Ned jested. He could feel the chill coming up the stairs, a cold breath from deep within the earth. "Kings are a rare sight up north." Robert snorted. "More likely they're hiding under the snow. Snow, Ned!" The king put one hand on the wall to steady himself as they descended. "Late summer snows are common enough," Ned said. "I hope they did not trouble you. They are usually mild." "The others take your mild snows," Robert swore. "What will this place be like in winter? I shudder to think." "The winters are hard," Ned admitted, "but the Starks will endure. We always have." "You need to come south," Robert told him. "You need a taste of summer before it flees. In High Garden there are fields of golden roses that stretch away as far as the eye can see. The fruits are so ripe they explode in your mouth. Melons, peaches, fire plums. You have never tasted such sweetness. You'll see, I brought you some. Even at Storm's End, with that good wind off the bay, the days are so hot you can barely move. And you ought to see the towns, Ned. Flowers everywhere. The markets bursting with food. The summer wine so cheap and so good you can get drunk just breathing the air. Everyone is fat and drunk and rich." He laughed and slapped his own ample stomach with a thump. "And the girls, Ned," he exclaimed, his eyes sparkling. "I swear, women lose all their modesty in the heat. They swim naked in the river, right beneath the castle. Even in the streets it's too damn hot for wool of fur, so they go round in these short gowns, silk if they have the silver and cotton if not, but it's all the same when they start sweating and the cloth sticks to their skin. They might as well be naked." The king laughed happily. Robert Baratheon had always been a man of huge appetites, a man who knew how to take his pleasures. That was not a charge anyone could lay on the door of Eddard Stark. Yet Ned could not help but notice that those pleasures were taking a toll on the king. Robert was breathing heavily by the time they reached the bottom of the stairs, his face red in the lantern light as they stepped out into the darkness of the crypt. "Your Grace," Ned said respectfully. He swept the lantern in a wide semicircle. Shadows moved and lurched. Flickering light touched the stones underfoot and brushed against a long procession of granite pillars that marched ahead, 2 by 2, into the dark. Between the pillars the dead sat on their stone thrones against the walls, backs against the sepulchres that contained their mortal remains. "She's down at the end, with Father and Brandon." He led the way between the pillars, and Robert followed wordlessly, shivering in the subterranean chill. It was always cold down here. Their footsteps rang off the stones and echoed in the vault overhead as they walked along the dead of House Stark. The lords of Winterfell watched them pass. Their likenesses were carved into the stones that sealed the tombs. In long rows they sat, blind eyes staring out into eternal darkness, while great stone direwolves curled round their feet. The shifting shadows made the stone figures seem to stir as the living passed on by. By ancient custom an iron longsword had been laid across the lap of each who'd been lord of Winterfell, to keep the vengeful spirits in their crypts. The oldest had long ago rusted away to nothing, leaving only a few red stains where the metal had rested on stone. Ned wondered if that meant those ghosts were free to roam the castle now. He hoped not. The first lords of Winterfell had been men as hard as the land they'd ruled. In the centuries before dragon lords came over the sea, they had sworn allegiance to no man, styling themselves as King in the North. Ned stopped at last and lifted the oil lantern. The crypt continued on into darkness ahead of them, but beyond this point the tombs were empty and unsealed, black holes waiting for their dead, waiting for him and his children. Ned did not like to think on that. "Here," he told his king. Robert nodded silently, knelt, and bowed his head. There were 3 tombs, side by side. Lord Rickard Stark, Ned's father, had a long, stern face. The stonemason had known him well. He sat with quiet dignity, stone fingers holding tight to the sword across his lap, but in life all swords had failed him. In 2 smaller sepulchres on either side were his children. Brandon had been 20 when he died, strangled by the order of Mad King Aerys Targaryen only a few short days before he was to wed Catelyn Tully of Riverrun. His father had been forced to watch him die. He was the true heir, the eldest, born to rule. Lyanna had only been 16, a child woman of surpassing loveliness. Ned had loved her with all his heart. Robert had loved her even more. She was to have been his bride. "She was more beautiful than that," the king said after a silence. His eyes lingered on Lyanna's face as if he could will her back to life. Finally he rose, made awkward by his weight. Damn it, Ned. Why'd you have to bury her in a place like this?" His voice was hoarse with remembered grief. "She deserved more than the darkness." "She was a Stark of Winterfell," Ned said quietly. "This is her place." "She should be on a hill somewhere, under a fruit tree, with the sun and clouds above her, and the rain to wash her clean." "I was with her when she died," Ned reminded the king. "She wanted to come home, to rest beside Brandon and father." He could still hear her at times. "Promise me," she had cried in a room that smelled of blood and roses. "Promise me, Ned." The fever had taken her strength, and her voice had been faint as a whisper, but when he gave her his word, the fear had gone out of his sister's eyes. Ned remembered the way she'd smiled then, how tightly her fingers had clutched his as she gave up her hold on life, the rose petals spilling from her palm, dead and black. After that he remembered nothing. They had found him still holding her body, silent with grief. The little Crannoch man, Howland Reed, had taken her hand from his. Ned could recall none of it. "I bring her flowers when I can," he said. "Lyanna was fond of flowers." The king touched her cheek, his fingers brushing across the rough stone as gently as if it were living fresh. "I vowed to kill Rhaegar for what he did to her." "You did," Ned reminded him. "Only once," Robert said bitterly. They had come together at the ford of the Trident when the battle crashed round them, Robert with his warhammer and his great antlered helm, the Targaryen prince armoured all in black. On his breastplate was the 3-headed dragon of his house, wrought all in rubies that flashed like fire in the sunlight. The waters of the Trident ran red round the hoofs of their destriers as they circled and clashed, again and again, until at last a crushing blow from Robert's hammer stove in the dragon and the chest beneath it. When Robert had finally come on the scene, Rhaegar lay dead in the stream, while men of both armies scrambled in the swirling waters for rubies knocked free of his armour. "In my dreams I kill him every night," Robert admitted. "1,000 deaths will be less than he deserves." There was nothing Ned could say to that. After a quiet, he said, "We should return, your grace. Your wife will be waiting." "The others take my wife," Robert muttered sourly, but he started back the way they'd come, his footsteps falling heavily. "And if I hear your grace once more, I'll have your head on a spike. We are more to each other than that." "I had not forgotten," Ned replied quietly. When the king did not answer, he said, "Tell me about John." Robert shook his head. "I've never seen a man sicken so quickly. We gave attorney on my son's name day. If you'd seen John then, you would have sworn he would live forever. A fortnight later he was dead. The sickness was like a fire in his gut. It burned right through him." He paused beside a pillar before the tomb of a long-dead Stark. "I love that old man." "We both did." Ned paused a moment. "Catelyn fears for her sister. How does Lysa bear her grief?" Robert's mouth gave a bitter twist. "Not well, in truth," he admitted. I think losing John has driven the woman mad, Ned. She's taken the boy back to the Eyrie, against my wishes. I'd hoped to foster him with Tywin Lannister at Casterly Rock. John had no brothers, no other sons. Was I supposed to have him raised by a woman? Ned would no sooner entrust a child to a pit viper than to Lord Tywin, but he left his doubts unspoken. Some old wounds would never truly heal, and bleed again at the slightest word. The wife has lost the husband, he said carefully. Perhaps the mother feared to lose the son. The boy is very young. 6 and sickly, and Lord of the Eyrie, gods have mercy, the king swore. Lord Tywin had never taken a ward before. Lysa ought to have been honoured. The Lannisters are a great and noble house. She refused to even hear of it. Then she left in the dead of night with not so much as a by your leave. Cersei was furious. He sighed deeply. That boy is my namesake, did you know that? Robert Arryn. I'm sworn to protect him. How can I do that if his mother steals him away? I will take him as ward, if you wish, Ned said. Lysa would consent to that. She and Catelyn were close as girls, and she would be welcome here as well. A generous offer, my friend, the king said, but too late. Lord Tywin has already given his consent. Fostering the boy elsewhere would be a grievous affront to him. I have more concern for my nephew's welfare than I do for Lannister pride, Ned declared. That is because you do not sleep with a Lannister. Robert laughed, the sound rattling among the tombs and bouncing from the vaulted ceiling. His smile was a flash of white teeth in the thicket of the huge black beard. Ah, Ned, he said, you are still too serious. He put a massive arm round Ned's shoulders. I'd planned to wait a few days to come speak to you, but I see now there's no need. Come, walk with me. They started back down between the pillars. Blind stone eyes seemed to follow them as they passed. The king kept his arm round Ned's shoulder. You must have wondered why I finally came north to Winterfell after so long. Ned had his suspicions, but did not want to give them voice. For the joy of my company, surely, he said lightly. And there is the wall. You need to see it, your grace, to walk along its battlements and talk to those men who man it. The Night's Watch is a shadow of what it once was. Benjen says, No doubt I will hear what your brother says soon enough, Robert said. The wall has stood for what, 8,000 years? It can keep a few days more. I have more pressing concerns. These are difficult times. I need good men about me. Men like Jon Arryn. He served as Lord of the Eyrie, Warden of the East, and as Hand of the King. He will not be easy to replace. His son, Ned began. His son will succeed to the Eyrie in all its incomes, Robert said brusquely. No more. That took Ned by surprise. He stopped, startled, and turned to look at his king. The words came unbidden. The Aarons have always been the Wardens of the East. The title goes with the domain. Perhaps when he comes of age the honour can be restored to him, Robert said. I have this year to think of, and next. A 6-year-old boy is no war leader, Ned. In peace the title is only an honour. Let the boy keep it. For his father's sake, if not for his own. Surely you owe Jon Arryn that much for his service. The king was not pleased. He took his arm from around Ned's shoulders. Jon's service was the duty he owed his liege lord. I am not ungrateful, Ned. You of all men ought to know that. But the son is not the father. A mere boy cannot hold the East. Then his tone softened. Enough of this. There is a more important office to discuss, and I would not argue with you. Robert grasped Ned by the elbow. I have need of you, Ned. I am yours to command, your grace. Always. They were mere words he had to say, and so he said them, apprehensive about what might come next. Robert scarcely seemed to hear him. Those years we spent in the Eyrie. Gods, those were good years. I want you at my side again, Ned. I want you down in King's Landing, not up here at the end of the world where you are no damned use to anybody. Robert looked off into the darkness, for a moment as melancholy as a Stark. I swear to you, sitting on a throne is 1,000 times harder than winning one. Laws are a tedious business, and counting coppers is worse. And the people, there's no end to 'em. I sit on that damnable iron chair and listen to 'em complain until my mind is numb and my arse is raw. They all want something, money or land or justice, the lies they tell, and my lords and ladies are no better. I'm surrounded by flatterers and fools. It can drive a man to madness, Ned. Half of them don't dare tell me the truth, and the other calf can't find it. There are nights I wish I'd lost it, the trident. Well, not truly, but... I understand, said Ned softly. Robert looked at him. I think you do. If so, you are the only one, my old friend. He smiled. Lord Eddard Stark, I would name you Hand of the King. Ned dropped down to one knee. The offer did not surprise him. What other reason could Robert give for coming so far? The Hand of the King was the second most powerful man in the Seven Kingdoms. He spoke with the king's voice, commanded the king's armies, drafted the king's laws. At times he even sat upon the Iron Throne to dispense king's justice when the king was absent, or sick, or otherwise indisposed. Robert was offering him a responsibility as large as the realm itself. It was the last thing in the world he wanted. Your Grace, he said, I am not worthy of the honour. Robert groaned with good-humoured impatience. If I wanted to honour you, I'd let you retire. I'm planning to make you run the kingdom and fight the wars while I eat and drink and wench myself into an early grave. He slapped his gut and grinned. You know the saying, all about the king in his hand? Ned knew the saying. What the king dreams, he said, the hand builds. I bedded a fish maid once who told me the low-born have a choicer way to put it. The king eats, they say, and the hand takes the shit. He threw back his head and roared with laughter. The echoes rang through the darkness, and all around them the dead of Winterfell seemed to watch with cold and disapproving eyes. Finally the laughter dwindled and stopped. Ned was still on one knee, his eyes upraised. Damn it, Ned, the king complained. You might at least honour me with a smile. They say it grows so cold up here in winter that a man's laughter freezes in his throat and chokes him to death, Ned said evenly. Perhaps that is why the Starks have so little humour. Come south with me and I'll teach you how to laugh, the king promised. You helped me win this damnable throne, now help me hold it. We were meant to rule together. If Lyanna had lived, we should have both been brothers, bound by blood as well as affection. Well, it is not too late. I have a son. You have a daughter. My Joff and your Sansa will join our houses as Lyanna and I might have done. This offer did surprise him. Sansa is only 11. Robert waved an impatient hand. Old enough for betrothal. The marriage can wait a few years, the king smiled. Now stand up and say yes, curse you. Nothing would give me greater pleasure, your grace, Ned answered. He hesitated. These honours are all so unexpected. May I have some time to consider? I need to tell my wife. Yes, of course, tell Catelyn. Sleep on it if you must. The king reached down, clasped Ned by the hand and pulled him roughly to his feet. Just don't keep me waiting for too long. I'm not the most patient of men. For a moment Eddard Stark was filled with a terrible sense of foreboding. This was his place, here in the north. He looked at the stone figures all around him, breathed deep in the chill silence of the crypt. He could feel the eyes of the dead. They were all listening, he knew. And winter was coming.
I love Robert.
Me too.
Oh, he's great.
I forgot how much I liked him.
I know.
The king eats and the hand shits.
The hand takes the shit.
The hand takes the shit. That's what it is. The king eats and the hand takes the shit.
It's like that's your opening proposition.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of how most jobs work, so it's
Yeah.
It's like an honest interview.
Yeah, that's true. It's an interview where the employer is actually telling you what's up. I forgot how fun he is. Here, run the kingdom for me so I can drink and whore around, or wench around, that's what he says. So I can drink and eat and wench around all day.
Right. Robert's like, I didn't know responsibility was going to come with being king.
Right? I didn't know.
I don't want this.
I don't want to count coins and write the laws and listen to people's problems. That sucks. I just want to party all the time.
And sounds like him and his queen are not getting along too well.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to be feeling that Cersei Lannister action.
No. We did get to meet the Lannisters, though, finally.
We got to see him for 2 seconds. Tyrion and Cersei and Sir Jaime.
said Jamie. Tyrion, though, my favorite character. I can't wait till we read a chapter on him.
He's so great. He's so great.
By far my favorite.
And apparently, Robert was in love with Ned's sister.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't end well.
Nope, she passed away.
And it's been, how many years did they say? 13 years? 15 years? Since they've won since they...
No, 9 years. I don't know how long it's been since his sister died. I can't remember what they said, but it was 9 years since they had met. Which,
yeah, I meant
the last
since
time they met.
I meant since his sister died.
Oh, okay.
Because it was
13, 14.
Yeah, 13 or 14 years. The man is still not over it.
Mm-hmm.
That's sad. Maybe that's why he drinks and wenches and eats so much.
Yeah, I think so. I think he loved her. He doesn't love Cersei.
He loved Lyanna, and she kicked it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know why, but it was awful for Ned, too.
Well, we know why.
Well, we do know why.
You learn why. It kind of brings up a trend I've noticed. It seems like Martin goes way out of his way to show what a good person Ned is. And not just Ned, but like the Starks as a whole, because so far from all the examples we've seen, and most of the examples I can think of, like Ned and Catelyn are the only happy couple. Like Ned and Catelyn are the only people who are in a loving, caring relationship. Everyone else just seems to be on that, well, I'm married to bring our kingdoms together. She's alright.
Just like they want to do that with Sansa and Joff.
Yes. That'll go over well.
And that'll be great.
It'll be great.
No problems. Smooth sailing. No big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Daenerys and Drogo, who aren't married yet, but they're gonna be, and they don't know each other. Again,
exactly.
It's a political marriage.
And then Daenerys may be wed a second time to Viserys.
Yeah.
Once they take back the kingdom.
Right. I'm gonna let this horse lord get all up in you, and then I'm gonna get up all in you later. God. I get this image of Robert Baratheon as a young man, like when they're fighting the war, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just like this larger than life dude, kind of you.
Well, I kind of picture him as Sir Clegan's brother. Clegane's brother.
Sandor Clegane's brother? You mean? Whose brother?
The Hound's brother.
Okay.
I'm not going to say the name because we haven't met him yet.
Right,
and I think
right.
that reveal is pretty...
I wanted to make sure that you were talking about the person I thought you were talking about.
Okay,
yep. Yeah,
that's kind of how I picture him.
Yeah, just like a big dude.
Yeah.
And we don't have a description of Rhaegar, at least at this point in time. No. We don't know anything about Rhaegar other than he was wearing some ruby-encrusted armor.
All black, ruby-encrusted. He's Daenerys' uncle? Or brother. No, it was his brother.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it was Daenerys' brother. Because it was it was Rhaegar's daughter that died.
Yeah, that died. Right. So, all I can think is, I don't know what that guy looked like, but Jesus, that must have been, scary to fight him. No, would you want to fight him? Robert Baratheon? Would you want to get out on the battlefield and fight that dude?
No.
No. He's got a big giant hammer thing. He's got a horned helmet that he could also use as a weapon if he needs to.
He was Thor.
He was Thor.
I do picture Robert Baratheon as this big bearded dude, so I mean,
he could be
big
Thor.
Horned helmet, big hammer. Yeah, he was Thor.
He was Thor.
And the Norse mythology, symbolism continues.
Yeah. Oh man, I heard some.
So much of this book is just based on Norse mythology. Now that I've read it and we're going back through these books, I see so much.
Yeah. There actually was, I was listening to something and they made a connection to Yggdrasil that I hadn't thought of, which I thought was really brilliant.
Oh, the trees.
But I can't talk about it because it has to do with...
Later on.
Yes. Ashes and stuff like that. So I don't think... Now's probably not the time. They're very much an odd pair.
They are.
They're an odd couple a little bit.
They're polar opposites.
Yeah.
I think is the great thing. They balance each other out.
Big time. Ned's so serious and so straight-laced. And...
honorable.
Yeah.
Like they even said when he was talking about going out and whoring and wenching and drinking and stuff, and they said, Ned has done none of that.
Yeah.
He's always been faithful to Catelyn. And...
Yep. He's always just been, nope, just my Tully woman for me, thank you. Even though she was promised to my brother, and I ended up marrying her instead. It's okay.
Did we learn that yet?
Yeah, just said it. I just said it in this chapter.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay. But yeah. I don't know. This chapter just made me think like how much of a spotlight they kind of show on Catelyn and Ned.
Right.
Like in this world of corruption and evil, they're like...
And gluttony.
Yeah.
Mellow,
they're like
good people.
Yeah. And they truly love and care about each other.
Uh-huh.
It was an arranged marriage, but it wasn't just an arranged marriage.
Right, it actually worked out.
Mm.
Unlike...
And like earlier, in the earlier chapter too, she doesn't believe in the old gods, so Ned built her own sept in the kingdom. Yeah. Just little things like that.
Right, he does all this, he does like little things for her to make her feel at home, because he knows it's got to be hard to be up in Winterfell, and it just shows he cares about her, he wants her to be happy.
Yeah.
He could be a douche and be like, no, worship the old gods in front of my ugly tree. But he didn't do that. Good guy, Ned.
Yeah.
Good look for you. Unlike apparently what goes on between the king and his wife, whatever goes on there.
Mm-hmm.
Can't be happy.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
I'm sure we'll find out more about that at some point.
But I'll something else I gotta give to Martin on this one. He makes every character very distinct, memorable, and like unique.
Yeah, I mean, like when I read the books, I didn't.
Even if I don't like the character,
still remember who they are and what their situation is. Yeah, I mean, I never had an issue keeping them all apart.
Yeah, it's very hard to think like, wait, did this person do that, or was it this person? It's like their personalities and the choices they make are so vastly different. It's like that person would never do that, but this one would.
So, do you think Robert's a Gryffindor or a Hufflepuff?
Gryffindor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No. Slytherin.
What? Why?
Because he wants Ned to come up so that he can just go out and do what he wants to do. He's not being courageous or anything for anyone else. He's doing it all for himself. I mean, I'm not saying that him and Ned aren't good friends, but...
You think that... What about everything else he's ever done in his life?
He was doing it so he could become king.
I don't know.
He was doing it to avenge the woman he loved. For his own self.
But I don't think he's cunning at all. Whatsoever. He's not cunning. Don't...
Well...
I
mean...
I don't...
He did win a war.
I also think he's picking...
He's just gone slack in his old age.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean he's cunning.
But I'm saying maybe he was. And he's just kind of relaxed and like, I don't care, I'm king. What do I gotta worry about?
See, if he was a Slytherin, he'd be working to like consolidate and grow his power and be like There's no ambition there whatsoever. He just wants to party. That's
His ambition is to party.
I don't think Slytherin is accurate. I also think he's not picking Ned just because he wants to just do what he wants. He's also picking Ned because he knows Ned will tell him the truth. Ned is on the straight and narrow, and I think he really does think that Ned could be good for the kingdom and would make the right choices, because he knows he doesn't make the right choices, and he's not good at it, but he thinks Ned would be good at it.
That's a pretty cunning choice of him.
It doesn't make him a Slytherin. I don't think he's a Slytherin. I don't think he's got it together enough in that way to be a Slytherin. Like, if he was a Slytherin, he wouldn't be complaining about all the fools and the sycophants and this and that. He'd be putting them in his place and doing it himself. He wouldn't need Ned to do it for him.
Maybe he is a Gryffindor.
I think he's a Gryffindor.
Alright, Gryffindor.
I think that's his... I think he just... Plus, do you think he's the guy that really thinks ahead? Or is he the guy that grabs his hammer and bursts through the door and just charges and does stuff?
I don't know.
That's my assessment. He's got that Gryffindor attitude. Like, Rhaegar, I'm gonna beat you up. Wait.
He's got that Thor attitude.
Right. Wait, think about it. No, I'm gonna go beat him up.
Let me resolve this situation by hitting it with my hammer.
That's what I'm saying. I think that's kind of his character. I think that's the sense you get right off the bat. He's just like a act first, think later person.
Okay, fair enough.
That's what makes him a Gryffindor.
And on that note, join us next time to learn more about Jon Snow. Also be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.